So the session is now being recorded, and I'm going to turn the presentation over to Joe Hintz. Joe, I'm making you the presenter, and I'm going to unmute you. Oh, actually you did. Okay, so you're good to go. So Joe, I'll let you take it away.
Okay, thanks, Tony. As Tony said, this is for beginners. It's not going to go into detail of order entry, but it's going to give you the basics. So order processing, as you can see from our menu, has the ability to add new orders. So the first option is order entry. And what you'll see is on order entry, you have a series of menus. Now, most of these menu options are represented by icons within the order entry program, which I will go through. But the process for order entry goes directly right down this menu. So pretty much you're going to add an order. You could obviously get an edit list. Some people are still posting orders, which all that really does is kind of updates the orders that may have been deleted and purges them from the system. But you can print acknowledgments, print factory tickets, you can close orders, create load tags, and various other options. So you could go right down the order, but then you're going to go into the release processing. And again, the releases can be created directly from order entry, but you do have an option of creating the releases directly from the OT screen. And then the next sequence is you're going to go create a bill of lading. And then, of course, you create the bill of lading, you can get an edit list, you print the bill of ladings, and you create invoices. Then that moves the invoice over to the invoice. I'm sorry, moves the bill of ladings over to the invoice, where you can print the invoice and view it, print it, and post it to the general ledger. And then if there's any problems, obviously you can levy returns, credit held orders. So basically, it's the process of taking the order from order entry, from an estimate or from inventory, and right to the invoicing program. And of course, there's a lot of different reports and on 2 different menus. And then you also have file maintenance. And the file maintenance is basically the background database tables that feed the order. And I'm not going to go through a lot of those, but just going to give you the basics. Now, one thing I do want to point out is we do have online manual documentation. So if you went to our manual, you would see under order processing, this would be on your network drive. And we do have tips, but the main manual will be under order processing manual. And then when you go into it, it's always going to be the first 2 letters of the module. OP is order processing. So that would be your documentation if that's online. Okay. And you also have tips, as I was explaining, and this gives you a lot of commonly asked questions. For instance, invoice only, ship only, you can notice has been documented. How do I add a fuel charge? And just a lot of common questions are in the tips manual. I also want to point out that Tony is recording this, and we do have, actually I even have it in the manual, but we have a document for how to go access those. This will be put on YouTube, and so you could actually search for, you could go to youtube.com and then you could search for Advantzware, and all of these Ask the Experts would be out there for you to review anytime. So let's go ahead and go into order entry, and let's add an order. But before I do that, I'm going to explain some of these icons. And basically the top of the screen we call icons. Underneath we call these tabs. And then if you were going to a specific order, you have buttons, which are your executable programs at the bottom of the screen. So one of the things I'm going to go into, first of all, is just this add button, this add tandem. This is special logic for what we call master estimates. And this requires you to type in a customer and then an estimate, which is what we call a master estimate. And then you can pick certain items. And you could even change the quantity of that item. So these are items that have been pre-estimated with the proper estimate quantity, the inks, the packing, the routing. And the benefit of this is it creates an order, a brand new estimate, and a job all at once. So you don't have to go to an estimate to create a new order. As you can see, you're getting a pop-up on what ship to, because anytime a customer has multiple ship tos, we have this little pop-up. And it can do it for each item. And you notice it's prompting me for each item. There's parameters where if you want it to default to the first item, it will. But that quickly, I created an order from a list of predetermined items that are on a master estimate. And you can see I'm getting a prompt. Do I want to create a purchase order for the printing plate? I'm going to say no. Do you want to create a purchase order for the board? I'm going to say no. These are parameters that can happen automatically. But you notice I just created an order for 3 items, and I never created an estimate. It's created a brand new estimate. You can see the estimate number at the top, and of course the job number is the order number. So that is a feature that a lot of people aren't familiar with, this add tandem. But I want to go through, like I said, the basics of adding an order. I just wanted to point out that one button. The buttons, the icons at the top are for every order. And a lot of these icons are available in estimating. So if you created, for instance, you can see a little star on this one. That means there's an attachment. Paperclip are attachments. So if I go here and I could run this, and this just happens to be a paint of a die. But I could add any kind of an attachment, and I can also add any type of a note. Now there's 3 icons right here in a row. This pencil are typewritten notes, and but specifically it's departmental notes. So if I go here, I can have any kind of a department note I want. I could create a department called SN as an example for ship notes, and then those notes will appear on the factory ticket. So department notes always appear on the factory ticket. You can also define notes in the customer file so that if you have default departmental notes all the time on every order, put the notes in the customer file and it'll appear on every job ticket. This guy here is another form of notes, but these are notes that are indexed specifically to the machine for this job. Okay, so it's really a job note, whereas the notes over on these icons are really an estimate note that every time that estimate repeats, the note will automatically transfer over. The push pin was originally developed so that you can have an attachment, and the key is the attachment is indexed to the order. So it was really written initially if your customer sends you a purchase order in a Word document or an Excel document, you basically attach that document to the order so that you could refer to that. This is their purchase order, and make sure you have all the line items on their purchase order on your order entry screen. What you could also do is you could send them an acknowledgement. You notice there's an icon here, print acknowledgement. And when you print an order acknowledgement, you have the option of, when you email, to email those push pin attachments you see right here. So you could actually acknowledge their order with their original attachment that you sent to you. So that's what the push pin's all about. This guy here is an Excel output icon, and you can output anything to Excel via that icon. I'm sorry, that's this guy. I'm on the wrong one. This guy here is the column movement, whereby you can move columns wherever you want to move them. And then when you exit, it saves those columns. The Excel is right here. This allows you to export any order that you're seeing on the order screen, and down here you can pick what fields. These are all the available fields. These are the fields that I picked to output to Excel. And then, of course, you have ranges. Okay. So you've got a series of attachments and notes that are tied to any specific order. I'm going to go into a specific order, and you'll notice these sprockets or gears. Again, this is another type of a note. And if I go to the items tab, you'll see another icon, which are these two little check boxes. This is a module that we sell. We call it user-defined fields, so because you can define any tab that you want and any field that you want. But one example of this would be quality control checklist. And you can see you could have it by printing press. You could have die cutting quality control check boxes, finishing, and so on and so forth. We can create these tabs however you want. So that's the two little check boxes. So, but I'm going to start at the very beginning, and I'm going to go and I'm going to click the plus sign, which is I'm going to add a new order. Now, I'm going to actually bypass the estimate number. If you put the estimate number, it's going to bring everything in. I'm going to bypass it because it's going to allow me then to put multiple jobs on one order. So what I want you to realize is an order is not a job. An order is kind of meant to duplicate the customer's purchase order to you. That order could become one job or multiple jobs, or you can have multiple different jobs on one customer order. And the way you do that is leaving the estimate number blank. Now there's a bunch of date fields over here. This is the current date that you placed the order, and these are little icons to pull in dates. So if you wanted to change it, if you didn't place the order yesterday, you could obviously change that. But there's security that will stop you from changing the order date, but right now I don't have it set. You can see this due date status. You can press F1 on that, and it gives you a list of status codes like hot, hold, have ready, before, and then the due date is applied right here. Now the due date transfers to every line item. So you enter it here and it transfers all over immediately. Just like the overrun, underrun, salesman commission, this is kind of the header information and it transfers to every line item. And I'm just going to say save, and you'll notice it says, sorry, PO number is mandatory. That's a switch setting. If you want, I believe it's a toggle box actually in the customer file. If certain customers have to have a purchase order, then you can type that in. You can force that entry during order entry process. So now I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to type in a couple different estimates. So I'm going to type in estimate 1651, and you'll notice I get a pop-up on all the quoted estimates, and I can pick any one of those quantities. And then the system automatically creates a finished good item number. I have it basically copying the customer part number becomes the item number, but we have different options there. And again, because I have multiple ship to locations for this customer, it gives me a prompt. The ship from is an option if you have your box plant has multiple locations that you can ship the inventory from. Otherwise, you may not see that as an option on your pop-up. And now, once again, I'm getting a pop-up. Do you want to create a die? So all your prep charges for the job, you can automatically create a purchase order during order entry. And this has to do when you have NK1 parameters. I believe this one is called OE Auto Prep. We have one for OE board, OE, I think it's OE Auto PO. And then for farm outs, we have the same kind of logic. So if the estimate was for a farm out, it would prompt you to create a purchase order for the finished good that you're buying from a vendor. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say no to this because I don't want to go into purchasing, but we could actually place a purchase order immediately. And this is another prompt. If I want the schedule board system integrated with order entry, it'll actually see whether or not you could schedule that based on the due date that the customer just requested. Now I'm going to go ahead and add another estimate. So I'm going to add 1275, and let's go ahead and pick a different quantity. And you'll see it's basically the same thing, but what I'm doing is I'm creating multiple jobs on one customer order. Now you notice I have a pop-up for the job card to pop up. Again, this is another NK1 parameter. The first one was a folding carton estimate. This one is a corrugated estimate, and I only had that pop-up logic happening for the corrugated. So I could actually go ahead and print the job ticket immediately, okay? But you don't have to, because you could always just click on an item code and go up here to this printer icon, and you could still print your job ticket, okay? Now this happens to be a folding carton job ticket. So you notice I can mix and match different jobs on order entry. To that same degree, if I click add, I'm going to bypass the estimate number, and I'm going to say the client also needs some 6x6x6 boxes, which is a stock box. And now you get another pop-up. Again, it's a switch setting if you want this to happen, but it says, hey, do you want to pull this price from an existing quote? And you'll notice this normally pops up when you have an estimate on the order, but this is popping up without an estimate. That's because this finished good item, I actually have an estimate. If I go to the finished goods file, I've got an estimate on that finished good record, so it checks the estimate to see if there's any quotes for that estimate, and I can import the price for that item. Now I'm just going to go ahead and add another one. Let's say I need another 500 for an 8x8x8. Now here's a pop-up. It's saying, wait a minute, we have a rerun, an overrun from a previous job, and it's alerting the customer service that this is available. Well, that's another NK1 parameter. It's called OE pop-up. And now that pop-up is also available right here on the book icon. And I have a whole bunch of other things, but the order entry notes are right here. So that is basically a spec note, but I can force it to pop up immediately. So I could keep adding orders, and you'll notice now I've got all these multiple items, but it's still one order. But this is a different job. So the job number is 1858-00, and this job for this line item is 1858-1. And you'll notice the due date and everything transferred over from the line item screen, but I could change it. Likewise, I could change the purchase order. If I wanted to say this is PO number 123456 or whatever I said, so that I can have a different PO for each line item, okay? And it gives you a prompt. Do you want to change it for on the order? I'm going to say no, just for this line item. Now I'm going to go to the next tab. What you would normally do is you release this item, and you can release all these items at once via the release button, or you can release them one by one. But before I get into that, you'll notice down here, if I click, for instance, this item, I've got little buttons at the bottom of the screen. It actually tells me what's on hand for that item, and if I click that button, it tells me exactly where they are located. So I can see, well, you know, I don't have any jobs or orders, but let's see if I had any jobs for this. If I go up to this first one, obviously, I just placed this order. So if I went to on order, it's going to show me these are all the orders that, these are all the jobs to replenish that inventory. So, and then allocated can be two different ways. Whatever's ordered can be allocated, or when I actually release the item, so I go to the release tab and I press the release button, and you'll notice it's going to change. This is another NK1 parameter if you want to basically email an advanced ship notice to your client that says, hey, we're processing your order, getting ready to ship it, and it automatically picks the right contacts. You can turn that on, turn that off, but you'll notice the actual quantity is now updated. And if I come back to this line item, notice the allocated quantity is now set. And the benefit of that is if you have blanket orders, you don't want the allocated quantity to be updated immediately from order entry. You want the allocated to be updated based on the release or delivery dates. So I'm on the release tab here, and I can add as many releases as I want. Now this is an actual release, and I can actually delete it as well. So I'm going to delete it. And when I click the add button, if I wanted to manually add it, the first thing I want to show you is the status. You have a help message at the bottom: bill and ship, invoice only, ship only, transfer. So if I had actually produced these and the customer could not take the inventory, you could always do an invoice only. Okay, and then of course there's another NK1 if you automatically want to create the ship only, which let's say I do, and then normally it would be a different date. So I'm just going to say yes, same PO number. Let's back up a second, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to produce this. So I have 100,000. So let's just say we're going to put 25,000 on a pallet, keep it simple. And I'm going to create 4 pallet tags. And that's what that button up there at the top with the little barcode is all about, is creating pallet tags. Now, there's different ways of going into inventory, but basically all that did was create my finished goods receipts records. We could have posted that immediately, but typically our barcoding people would scan them into inventory or into certain locations. But to put that into inventory, I'm going to post that immediately, just so I can process that release going forward. It's not really part of order entry, but kind of need to do it. Okay, so now if I go back to the order, I should have that on hand. Whoops, I think what I did was I closed the order by accident. Yep. Whenever you completely receive your finished goods, obviously that will close the order. So I'm going to reopen that. Actually keeps the order open, but it let me see what I did here. Oop, there it is. Okay, so if I go back here, so now you've got the quantity on hand of 100,000, and these are the 4 pallet tags that I just received. So when I go to release this, now when I do an invoice only, you process as an I, and then all you have to do is click this BOL button, and it's going to create an invoice. And if I actually go out here to the invoice program, there it's sitting there waiting to be invoiced. But the difference is, if I look at the update button, it'll be invoice 100,000, but you'll notice I've shipped 0. Okay. The next thing is you would do a ship only release. So if I go to the items for this item right here and I go to the ship only, now if I wanted to process this ship only, I could go to, typically you go to release and then you go to a bill of lading, but I could click this BOL button and then you get another prompt. Some clients have this set to no tags and they don't get this prompt, but I'm going to say I want to select what's in inventory to ship and only this job. I could do it on a FIFO basis. I could say all the jobs for this item. If you had multiple repeats and your customer allowed you to pull different jobs for a new order. For instance, that overrun prompt that I got. If I wanted to ship a certain quantity from the previous job plus the new job, I would say all jobs. But I'm just going to pick this one, and I'm going to go like this, and I'm going to pick all those tags, and now I've created an actual shipment. Now this is sitting over here in the bill of lading file, waiting to be shipped. Okay, and then if I print that bill of lading, I have a toggle box down here on the bottom. If I keep that checked, not only will it create my invoice, okay, but it will post it. Okay, and then when I post it, it's sitting out here in the invoicing program. So now I've got 2 invoices. Okay, one that has an invoice quantity with nothing shipped, and then the other one is sitting out here with a quantity shipped and 0 invoiced. So the net result is the customer's got all the inventory, but you've done a ship only and invoice only. And if I was to look at the actual transaction, you would see that what our system actually does in order to keep track of the items, if I click the FG item tab and I went over here, you would see it. Here's your tags, but you'd see these positive and negatives for each tag. And you notice the customer number here. This is because when you do an invoice only, it transfers a fictitious quantity to the customer so that you know the value of inventory that the customer owns versus the value of inventory that you own. So what I'm going to do is back all this out, and this is a nice feature. If you make any mistakes, you just click delete, and what the system does is it just backpedals and puts it into the bill of lading screen. And then if I wanted to delete all this, I can just delete that. Now sometimes it'll put it back into the release screen, and sometimes it goes right to the order, which is what it did. And again, that's switch settings. But now I've got all these, oops, picked the wrong item. If I go back to this item, so now I've got this nothing's been released. And I can actually delete both of these, and I'm going to add a new release, and I'm just going to do the normal process, which is a bill and ship. So now I've said this is a bill and ship, and I'm going to go ahead and ship 100,000. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say release, and I'm going to release it to this ship to. I'm going to say no tags in this example, okay? And again, I get an advanced ship notice. And I could do this for all the line items, quite honestly. If I wanted to release them all at once, I would click the release button. And if I didn't want to create a release, I could click the BOL button. It would go directly to the bill of lading. But this is basically whether you want to release one at a time or all of them at once. And now if I go over here to the release screen, here's my release, but you notice there's no tag selected. So either you're going to select the pallet tags that you've created for inventory, either by our barcoding application, or you could collect the select bin tags button, and you could then select them. And you notice I could select one at a time if I only wanted two, or I could click the first button and my shift key and select them all. Okay? And you could do the same process on the bill of lading screen. But for the release ticket, you're then going to create your release ticket. And there's different ways of printing this. This particular ticket, you notice, has a barcode. It's meant for our sharpshooter, so you could scan the pick ticket, and then you scan the pallet tags as you put them onto the pallet. And then when you're done, oops, I should have said post to that. So I'm going to do that again. And when you click post here, if you're using the barcoding, it would just print without posting, but I'm going to go ahead and create the bill of lading from this process. And now there, your bill of lading's now ready to be printed, but it has all the tags. Now, like I said, you could have selected the tags here. Okay, so it's the same program. And then when you print this, and if I say post, it's going to create the invoice. Now, if I don't say post, all it does is create the bill of lading, and then what happens is the accounting person, a lot of clients will have a signed bill of lading, comes back the next morning, and they go to this print, post bill of ladings, create invoices, and then basically anything that was shipped yesterday would be on this audit trail. They say yes, and then that creates the invoice. Okay, so then your invoice is sitting out here again. All you have to do is print it, and then you could post that to the general ledger. Now, what I want to point out here is you'll notice I've also got some plate and die charges automatically defaulted. Well, that's because if I go all the way back to the order, and if I go to any one of these line items, I'll go to the first one. If I click the estimate tab up here, I can go directly to the estimate. For instance, let's say I wanted to know what was the board on that job. I could go to the layout tabs, I could click the board code, and it gives me all the details from the board, including what vendors I may be buying that from. But what I could also do on the estimate tab, oops, my bad, got out of that. So what I could also do from the estimate tab is I could basically review anything about that job whatsoever. I could change the inks. A lot of times you'll estimate and you won't have all the inks defined. So customer service may have to come back to the estimate tab and put in the inks. They may need to modify the exact packing case or layer pads, and some various other things, they may have to add in order to get that updated on the job ticket. So that's the estimate. But what the estimate might also have are what we call miscellaneous charges or prep route, which is your prep charges. Now, these charges, if they're S for separately billable, as you can see the S under the Simon code, what that means is it moves it directly to the miscellaneous charges tab of the order. So now, if they didn't have those charges in estimating, then you might have to manually add these or update these right here, okay, in customer service. But what you'll notice is you also can put in the exact job number, the sales rep. You can have different commission percentages, whether or not it's taxable or not. So that's all your miscellaneous charges. The only other thing I want to point out on the order entry system is you have shipping notes and billing notes. Shipping notes are by release. So for any release that you're going to deliver, you go ship notes. These notes pull in. Sorry, I've already created the bill of lading, so I can't modify it. I would then have to go modify this on the bill of lading. But any shipping notes comes from the customer ship to file. It transfers to the order, but you could modify it here. So for instance, if I added another release, or if I go to another item, the ship notes could be different for this item. And every release can have a different ship note. The bill notes is really a bill note for the entire order. And as this little note indicates, the bill notes are defined by the group code BN. So you can actually create default billing notes by customer or in general for your entire company. And what that means is if you go over here to BC or NC for change user groups, and you go to BN, bill notes, this is a user group. So if you want default billing notes for all your customers, you go to your own box plant. The company I'm working out of right now is called the Advanced Packaging Company. So, and every box plant has what we call customer X or status X. That indicates that you're the box plant. And this is the key for a lot of things in order entry. One of them are all the ship to codes. So all your different plant locations are defined for customer X. And when you're creating releases, transfers or transfer releases, it'll either pull from the customer ship tos or from the customer X ship tos. But what you can also have for customer X is your bill notes. So if you come up here and you notice I have bill notes, so if I have generic bill notes, maybe there's a price increase going to happen, certain date. You can go to bill notes for your box plant customer, and that'll transfer to every new order. However, if you want special bill notes for specific customers, then you create those bill notes, for that specific customer. So you can go add bill notes for that specific customer. So let's go back to order entry and just kind of make sure I've covered everything. The last little tab on order entry I would like to go over, or a couple, is the matrix. Now, this is basically for distribution or anything that you're going to have stock pricing for. For instance, you can see these two items, 6 by 6 by 6. These are stock boxes, basically, that we can resell to anybody. So if I click the matrix here, basically it's giving me all the pricing. Since I've highlighted the 8 by 8 by 8, it's saying, okay, AT&T's got special pricing, and here it is. Now, I could also have special pricing by a customer type, like all the brokers may get this price. Or a walk-in, they get this, somebody walking into your plant and just needing to buy 100 boxes would get this price level. So that happens automatically when you add an order. So when you add an order, you can always click the history button, for an item and see all that history. Likewise, you could do the same thing down here, this little history button down at the bottom, and then you could double click that and you'd see all your sales history for that item, for that customer. So it's a way to try to increase sales while you're in order entry mode. So again, the steps are you're going to add an order, and then as you noticed, everything can be done pretty much in order entry. So if I want to print an acknowledgement, I have an icon. If I want to print a job ticket, I have an icon. If I want to print barcoded labels, I have an icon. If I want to print a release ticket, I go to the release screen, I create it, and I can print a release ticket. So basically, almost everything that was a menu in our older versions are now icons. In fact, you can see this load tag creation program right here. That can also just be a separate icon on a desktop, so that if all that person does all day long is create load tags, you have a special icon and there's no security to worry about because this is the only screen they see. Just like same thing for case labels. We can have an icon just for case labels. That is a very quick overview of order processing. I guess one last thing I want to go through. Of course, I'm not going to go through the inquiries and all the reports, which are a lot. But we do have returns, and there's two ways to do returns. We have this thing called levy returns, and basically this is going to, for any specific invoice, you say, okay, I'm going to create a return authorization for this invoice, and then you say what item, and then you say what pallet tags or what quantity. And what that does is when you're going to post that via this 3 button, it's going to create a credit memo, and it's going to actually push those items back to the inventory program as a receipt, but it's really a return receipt. It's going to have a status of an E. The only other option that you have is for return is, again, the release screen. So if I go to this item that I've already shipped and I wanted to return, let's say they wanted to return 1 pallet, I could actually come here and I would just say it's a B, bill and ship again, and I would say it's a negative 25,000, and I could put whatever date I wanted on it. And then I would just go ahead and go through the process of creating that bill of lading again. But the reality is there's not going to be any pallet tag on it, because we're going to be picking up 25,000. In other words, when you normally post a bill of lading, whatever the quantity you're shipping is subtracted from inventory. But since this is a negative 25,000, it's going to add it back to inventory. But what it's also going to do is create an invoice with a negative dollar amount. So the benefit of a negative release is you get a bill of lading document to hand to your shipping person, and that document is a piece of paper that they can use to go pick up the goods. That's the advantage of a negative release versus a levy returns. And like I said, if you go to this invoice now, this invoice will have a negative quantity on it. Oops, second one. So now you've got a negative quantity and you're going to have a negative dollar amount on your invoice. So I'm going to turn that over to questions. And this is just a quick overview of what order entry does and some of the options. And I'll let Tony ask the questions, and I'll answer the questions.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you. So we, first of all, I wanted to encourage everybody to go ahead and enter their questions down in the chat box so we can get those answered for you. Got a couple of questions that have come in. I just want to get those started. But while we're doing those, please enter your questions in the chat box so we can get those answered for you. So here's the first question. It says, we're used to order entry only setting everything up for the job ticket to go to production. Production then makes items, which pushes quantities and number of tags needed. Is this all integrated? Wouldn't production dictate this in case we don't have the right unit counts from the estimate?
Yes. The only reason I made pallet tags during this demo was so that I could select the pallet tags for shipping. So this icon that I made these pallet tags, as an example, this is job number 1858, and the item number is AT&T 1275. Normally, what people will do is they'll go down here to this job. The production people will have a separate icon called load tags, and that they will put in their job number and the item number via that process. So that normally this is, you can see it's a job receipt, and they can actually just put the order number, job number, whatever they want. And I'll pick whatever item I want. So I'm going to go ahead and pick that second item. So normally they're going to do, one item at a time, and then they say, okay, how much am I producing? So if they were, let's say they were putting 500 boxes in a case, and they were putting 50 cases on a pallet. So they would say, okay, and typically they would make one at a time. But let's say they were going to make 3 pallet tags all at once. And then let's say I'm going to copy this. Let's say that last pallet tag only had 40 cases on it. And you'll notice the last pallet tag only has 20. So the process of creating a pallet tag can also automatically produce the finished goods receipt. But yes, normally this is not a customer service function. I just did it so that I could ship goods on my bill of lading for my presentation. But normally this is done out in the plant.
Okay.
And hopefully I answered the question.
Yeah, I think so. If not, please enter me another question in the chat box. But next question is regarding returns. What if it's bad product and we don't want to pick it back up in inventory when we pick it up?
Well, if it's a bad product, then you just can do a credit memo to the invoice, and then you would go ahead and produce more goods. And then you would create another shipment, but that shipment would just be a ship only at that point. Or I'm sorry, that if they did a credit memo for the invoice, then they would do, once they produced, let's say they damaged 25,000, then they would add another release. So if this 25,000 was no good, they would trash it, and then if they created a credit memo, then obviously after that was done, they'd make another 25,000, but that would be a positive quantity. So then they would re-invoice that 25,000. So there's no one way to use our system. You can use our system various ways. So it just depends on what option you prefer.
Okay. Okay, next question. I think you referred to NK1 settings. So do we need to use NK1 settings to use order entry?
The answer is yes. They come defaulted when you buy our system, but there's a lot of them, you set as to how you want to use our system. It could be something as, like I said, OE Auto. These options right here determine whether or not you're going to create a purchase order during order entry or not. Okay? And it's up to you how you want to use our system. If you don't want to create purchase orders during order entry, you turn it off. But there's a lot of NK1 parameters. It starts out with the date. OE date. Can you modify the order entry date? Yes or no? If you don't want that modifiable, you turn it off. It's like, do you want to create a job during order entry? All these things are used because different people use our system different ways. So it's embedded into our program. It uses all those parameter settings, and it's up to you to learn what they do and how you want to use the system. Or just email help@advantzware.com and we'll answer your questions.
Okay. All right, next question. What reports are most commonly used for customer service people?
I would say they're all used, but the key is every order by and large creates a release, and quite honestly, that's an NK1 parameter. When you add an order, like let's say I'm going to add a brand new item here, let's say I'm going to go add 1,500 9 by 9 by 9s. Oops, wrong unit of measure. Okay, let me put a good product number. Let's go 500, 5,000, 5 by 5 by 5s. Now, you notice that prompt there, it says this item was for a different customer. That's an NK1 parameter, whether or not you want to allow that. But when I added that 5 by 5 by 5, it automatically created a release for the same order quantity. That's an NK1 parameter. Some of our clients don't want to create a release immediately. They want to manually add them down here. Tony, repeat that question one more time.
The question was, what reports are most commonly used for customer service?
So every order creates a release, and most of the reports use the release quantity. It's basically saying, here's when we need to ship it, because a release is kind of a delivery report. So I'm going to just say this first. This OR2 was kind of the great granddaddy, which this report might be 20 years old or so. And now I've got the report writer option listed here, whereby I can pick whatever fields I want. These are the fields I picked. But basically, it goes by releases. And as I said, if I just wanted completed releases, ones that I've already completed, it's kind of a history report then. But most of the time, you're going to pick releases that you have not actually created the release yet. And you can say, okay, let's release these. And you're going to pick it by a date range. So if I only wanted this year, and I'm just going to go to the end of the year, I'm going to say, okay, what has to ship that we haven't shipped this year? And you print that out. And again, you can pick whatever field you want. So this is the great granddaddy, and it's going in release date order, and it says, here's what has to ship. But you could sort this by customer. You can sort it by release date. But it's pulling the data from the release tab. Now, this report was kind of copied to OR9, and the only difference is before we had the report writer, people used to say, hey, add this field, add this field, add this field. If we would have this report writer option, we probably wouldn't have both of these reports. But you notice this one has a job number, and this report also has the style, I believe, and the MSF quantity and the job number. So yeah, you see MSF and style on this one. But then we copy this to what we call the Xprint. We have a more graphical report writer, and OZ1. A lot of these are, again, children of the original report. What's nice about this OZ1 report is it's showing you, it's going to give you everything from releases, but it's also going to give you, like if I say columns, you can see what I can pick, whether I want the job quantity, style, and all that, I can include them. But I'm also showing the board, the vendor for the board, whether or not it's been received, and then the routing. So this kind of combines purchasing along with the scheduled deliveries. And so it's going to tell you what has to ship, give you the job number. It's going to give you the purchase order for the board as well, and the vendor. So you can see I haven't placed the purchase order for the board for this yet. And then it tells you the routing. So when the board came in, you might say, oh, that's going directly to the sheeter, or this is going directly to this machine, power cutting machine. So this is kind of this report's not only the backlog, but it also gives you some manufacturing information. And then these are just kind of different ways of sorting that report. But the other thing, when you look at just dollar volume, what's my dollar volume? Those are really demand or delivery reports. And then you've got things like the ordered books reports, which says, okay, what was my value of my orders booked today, versus, commissions. And so it's just different data sorted differently, but it's all pulling from the order entry system.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Let's go on to the next question, and this goes back to returns. Is there a form requesting shipping to pick up the goods?
The only way we can print a form is a negative release, and then that prints a bill of lading with a negative quantity, which indicates that's the quantity you need to pick up. So the only form we have is a bill of lading document with a negative quantity, and that's done by creating a negative release, like I did on this first item. So when I have a negative quantity here, the nice thing about a negative quantity is it's the same exact steps. You go to the release screen, add a release, create a pick ticket, create a bill of lading, create an invoice. But the only form is the bill of lading document. So I don't know if I posted that. Yeah, I already posted it. But I can delete both of these and you'll see that. So if I push that back to the bill of lading, you'll see it'll now have a negative quantity. So normally it would be, you'd say I want 1 unit at negative quantity. Oh, you can't do that. It's got to be -1. 25,000. Or it could be a partial unit. But that negative indicates you're picking it up. But the other thing is when you post it, it puts it back into inventory. Next question.
Okay. All right, next question. This regards farm out orders. Can multiple jobs get put on one PO for a farm out?
Of course, yeah. The word purchase order is a little redundant, but first of all, the customer gives you a purchase order. I don't know if you mean that, but as you can see, I can have multiple items. These could be farm outs, okay? And it could be on one order, but then each one of these items can all be on one vendor purchase order as well. You can have the purchasing logic is kind of similar to the order entry logic, but for your vendors versus for your customers. So you can have multiple items on any purchase order, whether it be finished goods or raw materials. Okay? Perfect.
Okay, we're coming down to the end of the questions here. I have one more question. So if you have additional questions, go ahead and enter those in the chat box while we get this one answered. So the next question, Joe, is how can I find the orders for a specific salesperson?
Okay. Well, that's a good question. I'm not sure if we have the sales rep here. Well, we don't. We could add that. We don't have the sales rep here, but that would be a good feature to add. But right now we don't have it. I guess you could always go to the Excel. Yeah, that doesn't have it either. So the only way to do it is probably to print a report. Well, hold on a second. Let me see here. Sales rep's not here. I would imagine a sales rep's here. There you go. So even Excel, you could say add this, and you could output to Excel, and then you could sort on that field. So that's one way to do it. So you could output use this Excel icon, output all the orders, and you could do just open orders, and you could do it by a specific customer range, and then include rep, and then you could sort in Excel on that rep. But and then you would know all the orders for that rep. Other than that, I'm sure there's reports by representative. Almost every report, I believe, has a sales rep in it. That's it. You can print by sales rep here. So if I only want all the orders for sales rep number 1, if that's the right, I'm not sure what I called my sales reps, but, and let's make it for the whole year. If I did all customers, all orders, all items, then this would be, now I don't know if I got the sales rep already on here or not. Yeah, the rep's already on here. So this is just going to show me all the orders for that sales rep. So it's not an inquiry, but it's a report. Okay. And I think most of the reports have a sales rep option.
Okay.
Yeah, sales
I'm
rep.
out of questions. Okay. Out of questions. Is there anyone else that has a question? Go ahead and enter that in the chat box now so we can get that answered for you. Anything related to order processing? So let's give it a minute or two here, see if anyone else has a question. Joe, can you show them how to get to the help, the documentation again?
Yeah, first of all, I want to show that the question mark gives you some help. So if you're on this screen, the question mark gives you help about kind of the background screen. If you click in the middle here and then press question mark, it's going to give you slightly different help. It's going to explain how the browser works. And then if you're on a specific field, if you press the F3 key, you get help on that field. And so any screen that you might be on, if you don't have to go to our online documentation, you can just press the F3 key, and basically that's not much help there, just the quantity field. But maybe the unit of measure field might need some extra. Well, that's not giving you. I mean, that's pretty explanatory what that is, but I don't know. It has to be a more complicated field, but basically, you got help on every field. But if you want to go to the documentation, you go down here to your folder, and that's going to take you to your network drive. So you're going to go to your network drive. I'm not on a network. I'm just running on my laptop. So I'm on my laptop, and I've called it, normally on your servers, it's called GUI manual. I changed it to ASI manual on my laptop. And then every module is listed here. And then you're going to go to order processing, okay? And then under order processing, there's reports. It explains, some of they got different report options. But OP manual is your main manual. And then this document here, op.doc, stands for order processing documentation. And that's going to give you your standard documentation. Okay?
Yep, great. Okay, so there appears to be no more questions, Joe. So it's on 3 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting. I want to thank everybody for attending today. Very interactive. We love the questions. You can email me or call me or Joe if you have any additional questions or if you want to talk about anything. We appreciate all your feedback, and we thank you for attending today. So we'll call it an end to the meeting, and we'll see you next time. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.